What's up? Welcome back to the channel. It has been a while since I've uploaded, but I'm here now and I am glad to finally get another one out. So in this video, I will be talking about Benadryl and the negative experiences that I've had with it, and this will definitely help anybody understand why I had to quit taking that stuff. It was just so unhealthy and it destroyed my mental state. Like, I don't know how I somehow kept finding myself coming back to it every single time though, but I did. But anyway, if this is your first time on the channel, then you should know that I am a recovering addict. I've got 10 months of sobriety, and YouTube, along with other outlets, have helped to keep me clean and sober. So with that being said, let's get into it. So I first took Benadryl back in like 2011, I think, and of course I had heard from a friend that you could get high on it if you had taken enough, and of course back then, I just had to try it. Now, my first experience, I'm not going to talk about in this video because I already have a video of me talking about my first experience with Benadryl. Link in the description. But after that first time, I tried it again at some point, and I kept on trying it again over and over and over. There was just something so addicting about the weirdness of the experience. Like, it never made me feel pleasant. I never felt good on the stuff. Usually it would just make me feel sick and really, really anxious. But I always got some weird enjoyment out of hearing voices and talking to people who were not there and, seeing them and all that. And it eventually got to a point where I was basically immune to it. Like, I wouldn't get that experience anymore. Like, I stopped seeing people, I stopped hearing voices, but if I couldn't get anything else to get high on, then it was just something to make me feel just a little bit different. Even if that meant in a negative way. Like, I remember I would take like 300 to 400 milligrams, and knowing that I wasn't going to hear people, I wasn't going to see people, I wasn't going to hear voices or any of that, and knowing that it was going to make me feel like garbage the whole time, I still took it because it would sometimes, very rarely, give me some cool, vivid, closed-eye visuals. And so I would lay in bed all curled up, anxious as hell, heart pounding with my eyes closed, just watching these visuals go. For some reason back then it was worth it to me because it gave me some cool CEVs. Let me just throw it out there that Benadryl is extremely, extremely dangerous in high doses. People have had seizures from this stuff, they've died from taking too much of this stuff, and sometimes people just go into complete freak-out panic attacks. It's just not a safe drug to get high on. It is not worth it, ever. So the last few months that I was taking Benadryl, it was getting scary. Like, again, like if I didn't have anything else to get high on, I would take Benadryl, knowing that nothing was going to happen, knowing that it would just make me feel horrible. But of course, there was always that small chance of seeing some cool closed-eye visuals. And when I would take it some nights, I would just be lying in bed, heart pounding out of my chest. I constantly would keep forgetting to breathe. I was convinced quite a few times on this stuff that I was going to die. I would be laying there and then I would just catch myself not breathing for however long, and I would just be there like so I would have like really shaky breath and breathing was really hard to do, and I was afraid that if I fell asleep I would just stop breathing for some reason. Not that I'd be able to fall asleep on a high dose anyway. And so sometimes it would get really bad, like physically. Like, I remember my right side, would always get this really disgusting feeling. Like a really uncomfortable, I don't want to say painful. It wasn't really painful. It was just like a really uncomfortable feeling in my side where my liver is. And so I would be convinced that there was something very wrong with my liver because I was taking so much at the time. And I even went to go see a doctor about it, and they checked everything out, and apparently everything was okay. And turns out it was just really, really bad anxiety. But it was so bad that when I was high on that stuff, like, I couldn't even lay on my right side because it seemed like if anything was touching that part of my body, like, that uncomfortable feeling would only just keep getting worse. It was some really scary stuff. Like, I remember a few times where I would just be laying in bed and have such a hard time breathing, and then my vision would just go darker and darker and darker and darker to the point where I would actually think that I was dying in that moment. So this stuff really freaked me out. And remember, I'm not seeing people anymore. I'm not hearing voices anymore. I'm not getting any type of enjoyment out of this anymore. And it was just anxiety from hell. And I still have that same anxiety today. It's obviously not going to be nearly as intense as it would be if I was on that stuff, but now I always have that like really weird feeling in my liver. Sometimes putting pressure on it makes me kind of freak out a little bit in my head about it. It just feels weird and disgusting. And then there's other times that if there's no pressure at all, or if I can just feel like my clothes touching that part of my skin, I would get all freaked out about that too in my head. And it would again, feel disgusting. Sometimes it feels like bubbling in my liver, but not like the gas kind of bubbling. It's hard to explain, but like at its absolute worst, it got to a point where it felt like the insides on my right side of the body were like falling apart and just turning to mush. It's a very disturbing image. But I mean, hey, that's what I'm saying. Like, it got bad. It got really bad. Back in the day in like 2014, I remember that every time I took it around people, this is what everyone would see. Like holding my side as if I had gotten shot or something. But it's just because my anxiety was spiking to the max. And my eyes would be closed because at least I'm getting some neat visuals out of it, am I right? I'm not proud of my Benadryl use. When people usually ask what drugs I've done, I will almost never say Benadryl. It's embarrassing because it's just such a dumb thing to take for a high. The experience when it actually works is pretty interesting, I'll give it that. Like, I was always really fascinated with the whole, seeing people who weren't there, hearing voices that weren't there, and seeing bugs sometimes. It was amusing in a way, but it always gets to a point where it stops being fun. Like when I hear about, 14, 15-year-old kids taking this stuff to get high, it sucks, man. Like I hate knowing that a bunch of kids and young teens are, taking Benadryl to get high. Like, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and suggest that you get high on anything, but if you absolutely needed to get high on something, just smoke weed. You don't need that crap. You don't need that little devil in a pink pill. It can get so scary sometimes, man. I remember one time when I was sitting on my couch and I heard a voice in my head. And if you've taken Benadryl and you've heard voices before, then a lot of the times you can sort of, distinguish real voices from the Benadryl voices. But this particular time, I remember sitting on that couch and I heard a
very sinister, demonic sounding voice.
And it wasn't like a Benadryl voice. It sounded more real than a real voice, and it was right in my ear. I don't remember exactly what it said. I could never remember, but I know that it was not a good thing. And terrifying part about it is I remember feeling warm breath on my ear as I heard it. And like I said, it seemed so real and it was so vivid and terrifying. Like, the only other drug that I've heard that deep, dark, sinister voice on before was K2. Right before I stopped taking that stuff, I heard that voice a couple times on K2. Whether it was just all in my head or if it was real, either way, it was terrifying and it was very convincing in the moment. So yeah, it was not a good time. I'm glad I quit taking that stuff, man, because it was making me so miserable. Like, my mental state was just completely deteriorated. It was gone. My memory was shot almost all the time. I didn't even know what dopamine or serotonin was anymore. It pretty much just turned me into a zombie all the time, and when I was on it, I would get really shaky as well, and so that kind of became sort of a normal thing when I wasn't on it. Like, I'd be a shaky zombie, basically. So yeah, that is my experience with my last few months with Benadryl, and I'm still dealing with, some things today that I believe Benadryl probably created. Like I said, like, my anxiety, feeling clothes touching my skin sometimes freaks me out, especially on my right side. And hell, it's probably the reason my memory is so bad today. So just let this kind of be a warning to anyone out there who is experimenting, trying new things. Personally, I say take Benadryl off that list if you had planned on it. It's just not worth the risk. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. If you made it this far, it really means a lot to me. If you were able to relate to this in any kind of way, please feel free to share your experience down in a comment below. And leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more future content. 2020 has been a rough year, and I'm not really in the best place in my life right now, but, you know, certainly not the worst. But with that said, I will try to get some more videos out as soon as I can. I've got a couple ideas written up. I just need to write it out and film it. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next one. Peace.